you kids are probably asking yourselves, hey, Matt, how can we get back on the right track?
Chris Farley did not enter a room. He detonated it. On Saturday Night Live, every fall, scream, dance, and wild character made him feel unstoppable. Audiences saw fearless comedy. Friends saw something more fragile. Behind the noise was a man chasing approval, fighting addiction, and carrying pressure he rarely knew how to escape. Hollywood gave him hit movies, money, friends, and romance, but success never settled the storm inside him. Then his body began sending warnings nobody could ignore. He returned to the stage sweating, breathless, and fading. Yet the laughter kept coming because everyone thought Chris was still performing. But where did the joke end and the danger begin? Join us as we uncover the hidden pain, brutal pressure, and final collapse behind his unforgettable rise. Laughter became his first addiction. Christopher Crosby Farley was born in Madison, Wisconsin on February 15, 1964, and grew up in nearby Maple Bluff. He was raised in a large Irish-American Catholic family with his brothers Tom, Kevin, and John, and his sister, Barbara. His father, Thomas Farley Sr., owned an oil company, while his mother, Mary Ann, stayed home to raise the family. Their home was full of laughter, but drinking was also treated as normal. Years later, his brother Tom said the family did not fully understand how loneliness, fear, and addiction could hide behind humor. Chris attended Catholic schools, including Edgewood High School of the Sacred Heart, and faith remained important throughout his life. Joel Murray, who later worked with him at Second City, said Chris would always make it to Mass. During summers at Red Arrow Camp near Minocqua, he first performed in camp plays. Director Richard Wenzel noticed how naturally Chris came alive before an audience. His brother Kevin believed those early performances helped Chris realize that comedy made him stand apart. He knew how to hold a room. At school, Chris was already the class clown. He pulled wild pranks, dropped his trousers, and once got suspended after taking a dare too far during typing class. Even then, getting the laugh mattered more than the punishment. Chris later remembered nuns warning his mother that the other children were laughing at him, not with him. His answer was simple: "Who cares, as long as they're laughing?" That line revealed more than confidence. Chris did not only enjoy laughter, he needed it. When people laughed, he felt seen. When the room went quiet, doubt returned. That hunger would push him toward comedy, fame, and unforgettable success. It would also make it harder for him to notice when the joke was starting to cost him too much. The class clown chased a bigger stage. Chris entered Marquette University and graduated in 1986 with 2 majors, communications and theater. He also played rugby, where he studied the strange body positions his teammates used on the field. Those movements later became part of Matt Foley, one of his most famous characters. College gave him room to test how far he could take a joke. During a public speaking course, students were asked to explain how to do something. Chris arrived late in a sport coat carrying 3 beers. He apologized, ran into the hallway, and released loud primal screams. Then he returned without his shirt, drank a beer, threw the empty can against the wall, and calmly announced the subject of his presentation: how to get people's attention. Nobody forgot it. The stunt was loud and ridiculous, yet it showed how clearly Chris understood performance. He knew surprise could control a room. After graduation, he followed the safer path for a while and worked at his father's Scotch oil company in Madison. His family said he had real skill as a salesman. He could take clients to dinner, eat and drink with them, make them comfortable, and usually return with a signed contract. Still, selling oil could not satisfy him. The stage kept pulling him back. He began studying improvisational comedy at the Arc Improv Theater in Madison. There, he learned that his natural energy could be shaped rather than simply released. He did not need a prepared punchline every few seconds. He could listen, react, build a scene, and turn nervous energy into something useful. His hero was John Belushi, another powerful performer who had moved from the Midwest to Chicago, then to Saturday Night Live and Hollywood. Chris admired Belushi's fearlessness, physical style, and ability to appear completely out of control while still serving the joke. At that point, the comparison felt inspiring. Chris could not know how closely the rest of their stories would later match. His love of comedy had finally become a serious direction. First, he had to leave Madison, walk into Chicago's comedy world, and prove that the class clown could become a professional. Chicago turned him into a star. Chris moved into Chicago comedy by performing at Improv Olympic, where he studied under respected improv teacher Del Close. He then joined the Second City Theater, starting on the same day as Stephen Colbert. At first, Chris worked with the touring company. He learned the discipline behind live comedy, repeated scenes night after night, and discovered how to make planned material feel dangerous. In 1989, he earned a place on the main stage. He appeared in 3 revues. The Gods Must Be Lazy, It Was 30 Years Ago Today, and Flag Smoking Permitted in Lobby Only or Sensorama. Second City gave Chris training. It gave him characters, friendships, and the first shape of the performer audiences would soon recognize. Bob Odenkirk helped create Matt Foley, the angry motivational speaker who exploded through rooms while warning people that he lived in a van down by the river. Chris built the character from several parts of his own life. The crouched posture came partly from rugby players. The squatting pep talks came from his high school football coach. The furious voice sounded like his father when he was angry. The name belonged to a close friend who later became a Catholic priest. Chris had used different names in early performances, but once the real Matt Foley attended and heard his own name, Chris decided it fit perfectly and kept it. His work could be wild, but people around him also saw kindness. He donated his entire Second City bonus to charity before he was financially secure. At a Chicago soup kitchen, staff knew him by name because he spent time speaking with homeless people. His brothers and closest friends reportedly learned about much of this only after his death. He wanted applause on stage, but he did not always need attention for doing good. Hollywood nearly noticed him before television did. Chris auditioned to play the mall Santa in Home Alone, but director Chris Columbus decided he was not right for the part. Missing that small role hardly mattered. A much larger door was opening, and it led directly to the show Chris had worshipped for years. The night America discovered Chris Farley. In early 1990, Saturday Night Live announced Chris Farley and Chris Rock among its new cast members. Mike Myers, who knew him from Second City, helped recommend him to Lorne Michaels before the season began. For Chris, entering Studio 8H felt almost unreal. Pictures of his comedy heroes covered the walls, and he later admitted that seeing them was frightening. He understood its history, especially the pressure of following the show's greatest names. Yet once the cameras turned on, fear became fuel. Chris joined Adam Sandler, David Spade, Chris Rock, Tim Meadows, Rob Schneider, and others in a group later called the Bad Boys of SNL. Their off-screen friendship often felt like a college dorm. Sandler, Spade, Farley, and Rock shared an office. Late at night, Sandler used an old woman's voice during prank calls while Chris supplied rude sound effects. Chris mooned cars from limousines, removed his clothes for jokes, and performed stunts that could shock even other comedians. Rock later joked that he probably saw Chris naked more often than Chris's girlfriend did. The chaos was real, but so was his range. As Todd O'Connor in Bill Swersky's Superfans, he became a loud Chicago sports fanatic, shouting about "Da Bears." As Bennett Brower, he used air quotes while exposing humiliating personal habits. He became one of the Gap Girls, played a lunch lady during Sandler's Lunch Lady Land, and turned himself into celebrities ranging from Jerry Garcia and Meat Loaf to Newt Gingrich and Rush Limbaugh. The Chris Farley Show revealed another side. His nervous interviewer asked weak questions, lost his train of thought, and attacked himself for being stupid. Friends said that character was unusually close to the real Chris. Bob Saget remembered that Chris apologized for things he never needed to apologize for. In every sketch, he pushed harder than expected. He could shout, whisper, dance, fall, and suddenly become gentle. Audiences saw a human wrecking ball. The people beside him saw a sweet, vulnerable man who feared disappointing everyone. That contrast made him magnetic, and one shirtless audition soon turned him from a strong cast member into a national sensation. Every laugh came with a price. The 1990 Chippendales audition placed Chris beside Patrick Swayze, one of Hollywood's most admired dancers. Both men performed with total confidence, while judges compared them for a job. Chris removed his shirt, moved with surprising speed, and committed to every step. The sketch became a famous Saturday Night Live moment. Many viewers loved that he could match Swayze's energy and own the stage. Others close to Chris later questioned what the joke had done to him. Chris Rock said he always hated the sketch because its final message was that Chris could not be hired because he was fat. Rock believed a more emotionally secure Chris might have refused it. Bob Odenkirk remembered Chris worrying about taking off his shirt and being trapped as the fat guy, but he encouraged him to be the funniest version possible. Chris succeeded, yet the praise carried a painful condition. His body became part of the product. The louder people laughed at his size, the more valuable that image seemed. Years later, his family said doctors advised him to lose weight. But Chris worried that becoming thinner could damage his career and reduce the roles offered to him. He had built a public identity around being loud, heavy, strong, clumsy, and fearless. Protecting that identity could mean ignoring what his health required. The sketch did not create all of his insecurity, but it showed how easily fear could become public entertainment. Chris kept winning laughs, while the line between commitment and self-punishment became harder to see. The more audiences celebrated the image, the harder it became to escape. What viewers missed was the full private cost. They saw a man willing to crash through furniture, throw his body across a stage, and turn embarrassment into joy. Chris often reduced his appeal to fat guy falls down, as though his talent began and ended there. But friends knew his timing, warmth, movement, and emotional honesty made the comedy work. The danger was that Chris did not always believe them. Those laughs made him famous, but his greatest characters soon proved that his talent reached far beyond his size. The characters that made him untouchable. By 1993, Chris had become one of Saturday Night Live's biggest stars. Matt Foley finally reached television in a sketch with David Spade and Christina Applegate. The furious motivational speaker warned two teenagers about failure while making his own life sound far worse. Chris shouted, bent forward, crashed through a table, and nearly made Spade break character. The sketch worked because Matt Foley was not only ridiculous. Beneath the anger, he seemed desperate to save people from becoming like him. That same year, The Chris Farley Show paired Chris with Paul McCartney. He played a nervous interviewer who asked weak questions, lost his confidence, and insulted himself when the conversation went wrong. His real admiration for McCartney gave the sketch warmth. Bennett Brower used a similar idea. Chris turned rejection and embarrassment into comedy, even when he was swinging awkwardly above the stage on wires. But away from the camera, his life was becoming harder to control. Alcohol and drugs repeatedly affected his work. Lorne Michaels, who had already seen John Belushi die after similar struggles, refused to treat Chris's addiction like harmless behavior. Chris was suspended and warned that he could lose his job if he refused help. His manager, Bernie Brillstein, repeatedly arranged treatment. Each return brought hope, but stress often broke his progress. Chris admitted he could stay motivated for a few months, then just fold when something disturbed his routine. In 1995, NBC dismissed Chris and Adam Sandler. Movie offers were already pulling Chris toward Hollywood, so leaving SNL looked like a step forward. But it also changed what studios expected from him. Television had introduced his talent. Hollywood now wanted that explosive image, made even bigger, with more money and far more pressure attached. Hollywood wanted the same: Chris forever. Chris had already taken smaller film roles while working at Saturday Night Live. He appeared in Wayne's World, Wayne's World 2, Coneheads and Airheads, and made an uncredited appearance in Billy Madison. He also appeared in the Red Hot Chili Peppers video for Soul to Squeeze. As his SNL run ended, Tommy Boy gave him the movie breakthrough he needed. Chris played Tommy Callahan beside David Spade's Richard Hayden, turning their real friendship into the heart of the film. Spade said they behaved like an old married couple. From the day they met, Chris was friendly, amazed by New York, and easy to tease. Their arguments worked because affection sat underneath them. One of Tommy Boy's most famous moments came from real life. Chris once squeezed into Spade's coat in an office and sang, "Fat guy in a little coat." They laughed so hard that the gag entered the movie. Tommy Boy earned about $32 million in the United States and later found an even larger following on home video. Black Sheep reunited the pair and made a similar amount, but Chris was unhappy with the project. The studio wanted to repeat Tommy Boy before the script was truly ready. Spade later said Chris tried to delay production because he wanted to make the cable guy instead. Chris had been attached to that film for a reported $3 million, but his two-picture Paramount agreement forced him to honor Black Sheep. Jim Carrey received the cable guy role. When asked years later how Chris felt, Spade answered, "He didn't love it." The disappointment went deeper than one missed movie. Black Sheep felt like proof that Hollywood wanted him to repeat a formula rather than grow. Chris relapsed on the night of its premiere and required more treatment before starting Beverly Hills Ninja. Still, his drawing power kept rising. Beverly Hills Ninja opened at #1, and Chris was commanding millions for a picture. From the outside, the class clown had won. But every film demanded the same huge body, reckless movement, and non-stop energy, while the life waiting off camera grew harder to control. Fame gave him everything except peace. Hollywood's success gave Chris money and attention, but it did not give him the stable life he wanted. In a candid interview, he admitted that fame had not changed the basic rules of being human. He still had to work at relationships, his weight, and what he called his other demons. He had once believed enough money and fame would make everything all right. Instead, he discovered that he was not exempt. Love remained painful. Chris said romantic love seemed wonderful, but he did not believe he had truly experienced it outside the love of his family. He could imagine it, and that longing made him sad. Friends said women were a weakness, Although Dan Aykroyd remembered that beautiful Hollywood women visited Chris because he was funny, sweet, and gentlemanly. Chris dated model Lori Bagley, who described his powerful charisma. Yet no lasting partnership gave him the security he was searching for. Bagley believed leaving SNL made his life more overwhelming. Molly Shannon also said the loss of its routine, friends, and familiar structure left him feeling lost. Work kept expanding anyway. Almost Heroes placed him beside Matthew Perry. Dirty Work gave him another completed role. Both were completed as his health declined. He recorded most of the title character's dialogue for Shrek, with reports placing the amount between 85 and 95%. The early version was shaped more like Chris himself, making the role feel personal. Only a few recording days remained, but the project would become another unfinished promise hanging over his final months. Chris also discussed playing Fatty Arbuckle, leading a confederacy of dunces, and working with Vince Vaughn in The Gelfin. He had been considered for Dinosaur, a third Ghostbusters film, Captain Underpants, Kingpin, and other projects. 2 months before his death, he and Spade even spoke about making a third movie together. Director Steven Surgic developed an idea called Tree, pairing a White House worker with a strange truck driver searching for a presidential Christmas tree. Chris had more opportunities than time. The work promised a future, but his private life was becoming less stable with every relapse. His body could no longer hide the damage. By 1997, years of addiction were catching up with Chris. Food and the demand for laughter had also become difficult to control. He also reportedly experienced severe depression and obsessive-compulsive disorder, including urges that made him touch or lick certain objects twice to ease his inner discomfort. He did not simply ignore these problems. He met with a therapist, joined exercise programs, worked with a trainer, took prescribed medicine, attended recovery meetings, and repeatedly entered treatment. In his final 2 years alone, he went to rehabilitation or detox programs about 17 times. Each attempt showed that part of him wanted a different life. Friends loved seeing him after treatment, when he was eating better and thinking clearly. Jay Moore called sober Chris the most brilliant, brightest thing he had ever seen. But recovery rarely lasted. His brother Tom later said the family had few useful recovery resources and little understanding of the deeper issues involved. Doctors offered limited guidance, so they often focused on Chris's behavior without seeing the deeper emotional pain driving it. Tom said both brothers could stand in a crowded room and still feel alone. Chris also faced fans who treated his worst habits like entertainment. Some offered drinks, drugs, or giant meals because they expected the party character they had watched on television. During 1997, the damage became visible. On Nickelodeon's All That, Chris appeared with Kenan Thompson. The show continued without a major incident, but his usual physical comedy was limited. He breathed heavily and seemed to struggle with movement. At a Planet Hollywood opening in Indianapolis that July, he was badly out of shape, sweating and behaving erratically while pouring milk over himself like an Indianapolis 500 winner. A concerned friend pulled him aside and told him to slow down. Chris reportedly smiled and replied, "I want to live fast and die young." Doctors had warned him. Friends had warned him. Lorne Michaels and his managers had pushed him toward help. Yet the performer who could command any room was losing control of his own body, just as the stage he loved most invited him back. The night his collapse became the joke. On October 25, 1997, Chris returned to Saturday Night Live as a first-time host. It should have been a victory. Instead, the episode was built around a question nobody could ignore. Was he healthy enough to get through the night? Lorne Michaels secretly brought Chris Rock in as a possible replacement. If Chris could not perform, Rock was ready to host. The cold open turned that real fear into comedy. Tim Meadows assured Michaels that Chris would be calm, focused, and good because his party days were over. Chevy Chase appeared as his supposed sponsor. Chris pleaded for the chance, threw himself into a hard fall, and won permission to continue. The audience laughed because his struggle still looked like comedy. Yet behind the joke, producers and friends were genuinely uncertain. Chris had strained his voice during dress rehearsal. On air, he looked flushed, sweaty, and short of breath. His voice sounded hoarse and unfamiliar. He stumbled over some lines, but kept forcing his body forward. Matt Foley returned and spent much of a sketch riding a stationary bicycle. Norm Macdonald later remembered feeling upset that Chris had been asked to do it. After drinking a full pot of coffee as part of the routine, Chris paused in what looked like real distress, then continued. During Weekend Update, Macdonald followed a joke that failed by asking the crowd to laugh because it gave Farley time to rest. Other sketches used fake heart attacks, paramedics, heavy falls, shouting, and shirtless physical comedy. Chris played a Chicago superfan whose body repeatedly failed, a giant baby, El Nino as a wrestler, and a drunken Hank Williams Jr. The material kept turning his condition into the punchline. Some laughter sounded uneasy, but the show continued. Chris loved SNL and wanted to be there, but viewers were watching a man in serious decline force himself through warning after warning, while every struggle was framed as entertainment. The audience saw the familiar act. His friends saw that his body could no longer keep up. Less than 2 months later, the joke would become impossible to separate from the tragedy. The 4-day spiral that ended everything. After the final SNL episode, Chris still spoke about work and recovery as though another restart remained possible. In December 1997, he entered Hazelden again, but stayed only one night. He returned to Chicago on December 11th, weighing close to 300 pounds according to one account, and worried friends with how quickly he had left treatment. For several days, however, he seemed hopeful. Gillian Seeley, a close friend for more than 3 years, said Chris attended Mass at St. Michael's Catholic Church, baked Christmas cookies, and bought an expensive decorated tree. He talked excitedly about Almost Heroes and made promises about what 1998 would look like. He even attended an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, though he appeared anxious. The calm did not last. On December 14th, Chris began what people around him described as a 4-day binge. He moved through Chicago bars, drank heavily, used drugs, and surrounded himself with people who could keep the night going. At the Club Karma, he partied until around 2 in the morning before returning to his apartment with others. On December 15th, he appeared at Second City's 38th anniversary gathering. Witnesses said he was lively and drinking, though not yet visibly drunk. Later, he continued through bars. On December 16th, he missed plans to get a haircut from Seeley. A woman using the name Autumn later said Chris had called her that morning and spent the afternoon drinking screwdrivers, smoking marijuana, and searching for cocaine. She remembered him moving restlessly from room to room and said, "I don't think he knew what he wanted." The scene was not the confident chaos audiences knew. It was a man unable to settle, sleep, or stop. Chris Rock had already sensed where this path was leading. After one of their final meetings, Rock watched Chris from outside his apartment and thought it was probably the last time he would see him. Rock later explained that near the end, anything unrelated to drugs felt like a chore for an addict. By December 18th, Chris was alone in the home where the binge had continued, and his younger brother was about to arrive. What Really Killed Chris Farley. At about 2:30 p.m. on December 18, 1997, John Farley entered Chris's apartment on the 60th floor of Chicago's John Hancock Center and found his brother dead in the front room. Chris wore only pajama bottoms. He was 33 years old. John called 911. Police found no sign of foul play, but the cause was not announced immediately. The autopsy later showed that Chris had taken cocaine and morphine together, a combination commonly called a speedball. Advanced atherosclerosis, a serious buildup of disease in his arteries, was listed as a significant contributing factor. His heart and blood vessels had already been badly damaged. The final overdose ended the 4-day binge and confirmed the fear friends had carried through his last year. Chris had died at the same age as John Belushi, and from a painfully similar drug combination. A private funeral took place on December 23rd at Our Lady Queen of Peace Catholic Church in Madison. More than 500 people attended, including Adam Sandler, Chris Rock, Lorne Michaels, Bob Odenkirk, Norm Macdonald, Tim Meadows, Rob Schneider, Phil Hartman, and many others from his television and film life. Tom Arnold, one of the people Chris had impersonated, delivered the eulogy. David Spade did not attend, which created rumors of a broken friendship. He later explained that the funeral would have been too emotionally overwhelming. Another service followed on January 13, 1998, at St. Monica Catholic Church. Chris was buried at Resurrection Cemetery in Madison. Almost Heroes and Dirty Work reached theaters in 1998. His unfinished Shrek performance was later heard through released test material, while Mike Myers rebuilt the role. In 1999, Tom Farley created the Chris Farley Foundation to use humor in substance abuse prevention. Chris received a Hollywood Walk of Fame star in 2005. Years later, Sandler's tribute song still left him struggling to sing, while crowds gave Chris the loudest applause of the night. His story remained alive for decades. In April 2024, a biographical film starring Paul Walter Hauser, directed by Josh Gad, and produced by Lorne Michaels was announced, and New Line Cinema and Warner Brothers acquired the project rights. At what point did Chris Farley's comedy stop being funny and start becoming painful to watch? And do you think fame helped him live his dream or pushed him closer to tragedy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time.